Good morning, everyone. I hope all of you are doing great. Now, I would like to welcome you all on the webinar on indirect tax update organized by Will GST and Tax Connect. We have started this webinar from this month itself and will be conducting in every coming month. So I request you all to join the updates every month. Further, I would like to introduce our speaker, Mr. Vivek Jalan. Mr. Vivek Jalan is a qualified chartered accountant, qualified LLB and LLM. He is a chairman of Ease of Doing Business Committee in Bengal Chamber of Commerce and member at various chambers. He is a regular speaker at various professional forums on the various key area in direct and indirect taxes. I further request you all that during the session, if you have any queries, please write it in the chat box. All questions will be answered at the time of question and answer session. Further, request to mute yourself and keep your videos off during the deliberation. Now, I request Mr. Vivek Jalan to take the session forward. Over to you, Vivek, sir.
Thank you, Priyanka. And good morning to everybody. Thank you for attending this. In fact, this is our second colloquium on indirect taxes. Last one we had. So Priyanka, to that extent, I think you would like to modify your, rectify your address. And friends, this is the second colloquium, and the understanding, as we discussed last time, was that there are a lot of informations, updates available, like in the council meet which happened, notifications thereafter. We also come out with our analysis, but over the last month there have been so many updates. In fact, even yesterday, day before, so many important changes have occurred in GST and indirect taxes like customs, etc., which it becomes difficult to keep track, and therefore we thought that this webinar we'll do every month so that all the important developments in a month can be discussed, and whatever questions you have on your day-to-day operations in indirect taxes or regarding litigations, etc., that can be discussed with us. So do type your questions in the chat box during the session, and we'll take all the questions post the deliberations are over. So to start with, friends, the day before yesterday, you have seen there is a difference of opinion between Justice Bhuyan and Justice Ahuja of the Bombay High Court on intermediary services, the taxation and the GST impact of intermediary services. Now, intermediary services have been quite a contentious issue in service tax also. And we are fighting so many cases and so many forums on intermediary services. Just to recapitulate, generally as per the general rule, the place of provision of services is the place of the recipient of the services. But by section 13(8)(b) of the IGST Act, the place of supply of services as respects to intermediary services is the place of the provider of the services. Now what happens is section 13, it relates to those services where the either of the provider or the recipient, they are located in the non-taxable territory. Now, in this case, in case of an intermediary, how the transaction goes. First of all, what is an intermediary? It is very, very simple. An intermediary is a broker or an agent. In general parlance, what we call commission agents, right? So you can go to section 2, subsection 13 to understand. Just like a stockbroker, there is a seller of stocks, there is a purchaser of stock. The stockbroker connects both of these two through an online platform, and when the transaction happens, he gets a commission. Now, in case of intermediary also, what happened in case of a commission agent is that, say you have a seller in China and you have a recipient of the goods in Japan, right? Now this intermediary or the broker was in India. What he did was he connected the seller in China to the customer in Japan, and on the sales he has got a commission of 1 or 2%, right? This is what happens in an intermediary commission agent kind of a services. This was taxed as CGST plus SGST, wide section 13(8)(b), because the place of supply is the place of the intermediary itself. Same was the provision in service tax. The Justice Bhuyan, he held in the case of Dharmendra M. Jani, day before yesterday it was reported that such provision to create a deeming fiction whereby the place of supply becomes the place of the provider of the service by a deeming fiction is ultra virus. The GST law and the authority provided by the Constitution, and therefore this to this extent charging GST on intermediary services to foreign parties would be ultra virus. However, Justice Ahuja, he held his opinion which would be pronounced on 16th of June, and he has cited that he differs with the opinion of Justice Bhuyan. Intermediary services was challenged by in the Gujarat High Court also in case of Material Recycling Association, and the Honorable Gujarat High Court has dismissed the petition challenging the wires of intermediary services. Now, friends, this was regarding the background or the legal going on in the High Court, the legal battle. All of this, mind that, is pre-1st October 2019, right? From 1st October 2019, wide exemption notification 9/2017 IGST rate, entry number 12 capital double A, right? Such intermediary services have been exempt from GST already, where the supplier as well as the recipient of the goods are out of India. So in my example, where the customer is in Japan, the supplier is in China, from 1st October 2019, this would be exempt provided the documents are maintained, copy of bill of lading, you have an executed contract between the supplier and buyer, certificate of origin, as you know, it is a very important document, and declaration from the intermediary is there, right? As well as the invoice is there. So from 1st October 2019, already it is exempt. This battle which is going on in the High Court is pre-1st October 2019. However, there are critical issues to be noted. Number one, this exemption is only applicable in case both the supplier as well as the recipient are out of India. Many a times, you know, foreign multinational companies, what they do, they have to transfer a part of their profits out of India, and in addition to royalty, now this commission services, this is another way of transferring the profits out of India, and generally they get into an agreement where they say, okay, we are finding out customers for our mother company which is outside India, and we will take a commission on that. Such commissions still are liable to GST as it stands today, right? So if such an MNC gets into this contract where the recipient of the goods is in India, still it will be liable to GST, mind that. So all MNCs, when they're getting into, when they're structuring their contracts, they have to take note of this, number one. Number two, it is only where in case of supply of goods outside India, right? However, say for example, you are an intermediary and you get a hotel booked in Japan for a person in China, right? And you get a commission for that, or a agency pay for that. Still, it is supply of services from a buyer to a customer outside India. It is not goods, and therefore 12AA would not apply, right? So this 12AA exemption in case of intermediary is only for the purpose of supply of goods outside India, where both the recipient and the provider of goods are outside India, subject to these documents, right? So similarly, you see, there are three ways to do business in India as per the FEMA regulations. First is you create a subsidiary in India. The second is you create a licensing office, and third is you create a branch office. Now this Dubai Chamber of Commerce, right, it created a licensing office, and many of the licensing offices today in India, what we say, we are fighting a legal battle, right, in Delhi regarding this licensing office again. Now this Dubai Chamber of Commerce, what it did, that it created a licensing office in India, and this licensing offices, now it just collected the service payments and other payments on behalf of the Dubai Chamber of Commerce and remitted this amount, right? That was the only activity which the licensing office did, and it was of the opinion that, you see, this is not business at all, it is just a licensing office and this would not be liable to GST. It went to the authority of advanced ruling, which ruled that no, this is a business activity, no doubt, and it is in the nature of intermediary services, right? So be very careful, friends, for again, for the multinational companies which are located outside India, right? And they create a licensing office. In one of the cases, you see, where we are fighting a legal battle, the licensing office, it just collected money for the goods which is sent directly by the mother company outside India to the customer in India. Our submission is that in case you are doing such a transaction from your licensing office in India, please keep a small service charge which will be liable to GST if the threshold limit is, you see, cleared, right? So very, very important for all licensing offices across the country who fall as intermediaries. Friends, other very critical issue post the implementation of e-invoices, right? This you will not get in the law book anywhere. We have faced this in many of our clients as a practical scenario on the refunds part, on payment of duty, right? You all know that by this Finance Act 2021, refunds on payment of duty, once it is notified, will not be applicable other than few taxpayers and few goods or services, right? Few goods. However, till the time when refunds on payment of duty, they continue, right? What is the practical issue, right? You must all be facing who are into exports on payment of duty. That is the difference due to the foreign exchange fluctuation. But when, mind that, hold on, foreign exchange fluctuation between the time when you create an invoice to the time your shipping bill is generated, right? So say for example, your goods move out for export on today, that is the 12th of June 2021, right? Your shipping bill is generated on 27th of June after 15 days, right? Today, when your invoice is generated, the foreign exchange rate is 70. When the shipping bill is generated, the foreign exchange rate becomes 69. So the shipping bill, say the invoice is of $1 lakh. So your invoice is for 70 lakh rupees. Your shipping bill is for 69 lakh rupees, and the refund under GST will be granted only on 69 lakh rupees. That is a lesser amount, but in your GSTR1 you would have paid on the basis of your e-invoice, which cannot be cancelled beyond 24 hours. You would have paid GST on 70 lakh. So in hindsight, you would be losing that amount of refund on rupee 1 lakh, right? That is 18,000 in the instant example. Many of the taxpayers, they use the wrong procedure, which can, you see, invite the department's scrutiny and notices. What they do, they manually change the GSTR1 table number 6A from 70 lakh to 69 lakh so as to match with the shipping bill and pay GST accordingly. Friends, hold on. You are violating Rule 34(1) of the CGST rules read with the IGST Act. So what you are doing, as per the Rule 34(1), the foreign exchange rate in case of goods have to be determined on the basis of the time of supply under section 12(2). The time of supply for goods under 12(1) is the date of the invoice. So you are artificially changing the time of supply in your GSTR1 by a manual intervention, and therefore non-complying with Rule 34(1) read with 12(1) and read with section 31. So what we suggest on the contrary is to follow a debit note or a credit note mechanism. Mind that there is a problem again, right? Now we have taken next to 10 days to decipher this. I know it is not very easy, right? But please, when you go back into your operations, please do look at your export transactions and you will understand, right? So when you are filing in, when you are putting in a credit note, right? If you go to table 9B of GSTR1, it will not allow you because it will not match with your table 3.1.B in GSTR 3B, which does not take into account 9B of the GSTR 1. So if your 9B has a credit note, the GSTR 3B will not allow you to create a mismatch because it will not take in 9B for the purpose of its computation. So you have, what we recommend is that you make a credit note. It is not an export credit note and you show it in 3.1.A, right? Again, same mechanism you follow in the debit note scenario, but in case of LUT refunds without payment of duty, this problem is not there, right? You can, but mind that you have to change the value, right? You have to change the value at least to comply with Rule 34(1). And so again, debit note, credit note would be importantly, it would be important to create a debit note, credit note, or a supplementary invoice as per section 34 in this case. So friends, this is again, this is, as I told you, all exporters would be facing this kind of an anomaly. Maybe they have not seen that because the person who is filing the returns, he is doing a manual intervention. But in case of manual intervention, I am telling you, you would find a notice from the department going forward. Therefore, to avoid such notices, it is important that you follow the right procedure in this case. And of course, we are representing to the GST Council also to come out with a clarification in this respect, which is a general issue with all the exporters. So another thing on refunds is this circular 3 and 4. We discussed this in our last colloquium also. Now, many a times what happens, you file your GSTR1 with the wrong value, you pay the GST which is less than your what is in the shipping bill, the refunds are generated, then you try to amend the GSTR1, it does not get amended and therefore you lose out on the refunds. Then there are SB005 errors, SB001 errors, so many kinds of errors are there. So this circular 3 and 4 of the customs, it laid down a procedure for manual officer interface for sanctioning of all these refunds, right? Although the timeline is for application under this circular 3 and 4 is 31st of March 2021, but friends, in case of any stuck up refunds, I can tell you across the country now these refunds are getting expedited, and it is always better to follow a manual process under Rule 97A, right? Rule 97A has found its place long time back in the rules apropos the various high court judgment in this what you can see on your screen, the Madras High Court judgment in case of Mehar Tex, right, where the high courts have ruled that if the system does not allow a refund, it has to be granted by a manual process. Just because of a technical glitch in the system, a substantive right of refunds cannot be denied. So across the country in various states now we have tried to expedite these stuck up returns. We are getting positive responses. So wherever your refunds are stuck up due to these technical glitches, one thing is very, very clear: these procedural issues will not come in the way of the substantive right of refund. Refunds would be granted irrespective of the procedural issues. Similarly, Rule 90 has been amended in the month of May, right? In the first week of May, I suppose. Now, what is this amendment? This was a genuine hardship. We'll explain by means of an example because theoretically you would have read it. Now, what happens every time we see in case of refunds by a manual process of RFD 1, most of the times you always get an RFD 03, that is a deficiency memo. Let us take an example. Now, your time barring date for the purpose of GST refunds, that is expiring on 31st of May 2021. You have filed a refund application on 25th of May 2021, 6 days before the time barring period, right? The officer issues you a deficiency memo on 15th of June. You file a fresh application on 18th of June. However, when you file a fresh application for 18th of June, that was considered as time barred by field formations because your time barring period has lapsed on 31st of May. Now, rightly so, by amendment of this Rule 90 sub Rule 3, what the council has done, that this period between issue of deficiency memo to reapplication or a fresh application, that is between 15th of June to 18th of June, that is 3 days. This will only be counted in the time barring period, right? So your time barring period to the extent of 6 days was still alive. You have taken only 3 days for the purpose of reapplication. So still you have 3 days of validity left, and hence your application will not be time barred. However, say for example, you reapply on 25th of June. So you have utilized how many? 10 days. However, you had a cushion of only 6 days, right? So therefore, your application will still be continued to be time barred. Please analyze this provision and take actions appropriately. Many of the taxpayers post this amendment, they called us and they said, "ठीक है, अब तो we can apply anytime." No, you cannot apply anytime. Still, there is this time barring for the fresh application, which one should note. Of course, now there are many cases now across the country, this DHL Express bulk liquid solutions, where it has been held by various forums that for procedural lapses, again in one of our cases also which got cleared in the commissioner appeal stage itself, the MEIS for Delhi, that was utilized in Chennai, and what happened is that the endorsement of the customs was not there on the MEIS script. So the officer in Chennai held that no, your MEIS was not endorsed and therefore we will not allow you the benefit of this MEIS. But even at the commissioner appeal stage, it was held that this is a procedural issue. And please note this judgment, very, very important judgment for any procedural lapses. Ashok Leland versus Commissioner of Customs held by the Apex Court, where it had held that for procedural lapses, the substantive claim of foreign trade policy and other substantive claims cannot be denied. Read with circular 1063, right? So very, very important, and you can take shelter under this circular and the case of Ashok Leland and the Apex Court's ruling in that case. GST Council decisions which have been notified, right? While again there you would have read various analysis, but just to update you on, there are some decisions of the GST Council which still have not been notified, right? So we'll discuss on those specifically which have not been notified as of now, or the circular is not out in those in respect of those council decisions, and those which have been notified, just an understanding on those decisions, right? So first of all, this annual return and annual GST audit, we all thought that GSTR 9C would be scrapped, and maybe GSTR 9, the annual return, that would have tables relating to 9C. From the Institute of Chartered Accountants also a format was suggested, but the government has come out with the intention of the council is that the 9 and 9C in the present form, so it seems, would prevail, right? Only the auditor's certificate is not required, but 9 and 9C would still prevail. So friends, we should still be very careful in filling up our 9 and 9C. We have discussed this in the last colloquium also, but there are many issues which we have fathomed. One of this is table 8D of GSTR 9, right? We have deliberated on this in all our seminars till now. Wherever we have deliberated on GSTR 9 and 9C, 8D of GSTR 9, that cannot be a negative. If your row 8D of GSTR 9 is in the negative, mind that you would be looking at a notice as you see on your screen, this row number 6. In case your 8D is negative, it would mean that you have availed input tax credit higher than the input tax credit available in your GSTR 2A, and it would result in a data analytical notice as you see on your screen, issued for 17-18, for 18-19, 19-20. Every year it would be replicated, I am sure, right? So again, table number 12 of GSTR 9C, that is very important and to be filled up correctly. So it is very important for this 9 and 9C, again, as the responsibility is with the management now to fill it up correctly, and so that there is no inconsistency between your 1, 3B, 9 and 9C, which can result in a data analytical notice as you have seen on your screen. Very important perennial issue since the time GST has come is whether the interest under 50 subsection 1 would be charged on gross or on net. Even in case after this Pratibha Processor's decision in the erstwhile Central Excise Law by the Honorable Apex Court, the field formations have not relented, and even after many High Court decisions in case of LC infra projects, etc., the field formations went on arguing that the GST interest was liable on the gross liability and not on the net liability after deduction of ITC. Now, by notification 16/2021, apropos the GST Council's decision and the Finance Act 2021, provision to section 50 subsection 1 has been notified, and it is now retrospectively from 1st July, the issue has been put to rest that interest under GST would only be applicable on net liability and not on gross liability, right? In case you have paid such an interest, time to apply for a refund at least. Okay. In case of educational institutions, a circular would be out very soon on this. For examinations conducted, it was a view was taken by the field formations, and that only examinations conducted by the central and state educational boards would be exempt. Now a circular would be out very soon apropos the GST Council decision that examinations conducted by National Board of Examinations would also be exempt, right? The National Board of Examination kept on charging GST on the examinations conducted by it. A very important circular which is awaited still apropos the GST Council decision is on construction of roads. Now I will take few minutes on this. This is a very, very important circular for the construction industry who are into construction of roads. Now friends, there are various modalities by which the NHAI and other government authorities, they get into a PPP model for construction of roads. Say for example, NHAI approaches a private player for construction of roads. There are basically three modalities. First is BOT, build, operate, transfer. So the private player, it builds, constructs the road. Mind that the GST on the goods and services received by the private player for construction of road is still liable to tax. The services of construction of road is still liable to tax. In build operate model, what happens is this private player, it constructs the roads and it operates it for some time. It collects the toll tax on that, and after a certain point of time, it transfers it to the government, right? Second is the annuity model. In the annuity model, the tax, the toll is collected by this private player, but the payment which is received by it is in the form of an annuity, right? It does not depend on this collection of toll. The third is the hybrid model, which has a part of the where the part of the cost is borne by the government and the part is borne by the private player, and some of the annuity is received by it after some time along with interest. So now the GST Council in its 20, so access to a road or bridge, the service of a access to road or bridge on payment of toll was always exempt. Why the notification for exemption, right? After the 22nd council meeting, operational services, right, by of highways, expressways, for roads and bridges, that was additionally exempt, right? Service by way of access to road or bridge on payment of annuity, that was also exempt under entry number 9967. Now the question was that what happens on this annuity payment, because construction of road services provided to the government, that still is taxable. So what happens on this annuity receipt? That will be clarified by this circular, possibly, that annuities which are paid only for the services by way of access to road or bridge, that part would continue to be exempt, but annuity on account of construction of the road, that would not be exempt, right? Again, this, I expect this to again open a plethora of litigations and issues once this circular is out. Let us see how the circular is worded and whether it clarifies this position correctly or not. Again, for the construction industry, it will be clarified by a circular. That circular is not out, that services supplied to a government entity by way of construction of a ropeway, right? That would be taxable at 18%. This instant entry number 17 in the exemption notification, which provides for services provided to the central government by way of transport of passengers by air, that would not be applicable for construction of ropeways, right? Possibly this would be clarified by the circular going forward. So services provided to the government entity by way of construction of a ropeway, that will be liable to tax at 18%. Mind that it will be a clarification circular. So it is not a notification and it will have a retrospective application, right? As if this was clarified from day one itself, right? Again, uh, anomaly has been rectified in case of developers and joint development agreements. You see, in a joint development agreement, we all are aware all construction of residential properties now happen through a joint development agreement, where there is a landowner, he transfers the development right to the developer constructs certain flats and transfers it back to the uh, landowner. The time of supply for the landowner for the services provided for transfer of development right, that is when he sells these flats under construction to the third parties, whereas the time of supply for the developers, right, is before issuance of completion certificate. Now that portion that has been rectified, so that the time of supply of the developer can also be made at any time before the completion certificate is issued. So what now the developers can do with the landowners is that they can get into back-to-back agreements, that when the landowner charges for his share, the flats which he sells under construction, the landowner provides a bill to the customer. The developer provides a back-to-back bill to the landowner. The landowner takes the GST and pays only the balance portion of GST on his profit. He pays the developer the GST portion and the developer pays it to the government. So this cash flow issue, that will be rectified on the one hand, and on the other hand, the landowners who could not utilize this ITC at the fag end of the project, now they can utilize this ITC. So this has been clarified and rightly so. This has been notified now and rightly so. Leviability of IGST on repair value of the goods, right, re-imported after repairs. Again, a circular is expected on this. Now, the division bench of the Honorable Delhi Tribunal, it has held that IGST is not equivalent to the customs duty, and IGST should not be levied on the re-import of the goods, right, which had been sent on repairs. But what IGST will be leviable on would be the services portion, right, on import of services. So that IGST would be levied. I think that would be clarified in the circular going forward. For shipping industry, relief, I would say, And something to note is, first of all, is this maintenance, repair and operations service provided by the service providers to the shipping industry, that will be taxed at 5% and not 18%. A bigger relief is the place of supply. So friends, what happens is that if say a foreign vessel owner, it brings its vessel to India for maintenance, repair and operations. Okay, so maintenance and repair, say, and the service provider for maintenance and repairs, he is in India. So he repairs and maintains that ship and charges on his services. Now what happens on these services, the place of supply is under section 13(3)(a). That is, the place of supply in case of this performance based service will be in India, right? Therefore, there would be a GST applicability, right? Because the place of supply is the place of the provider of the service. This was making the entire industry incompetent vis-a-vis its foreign competitors. And now, because this place of supply, by this notification 321 integrated tax, that will be the place of residence of the recipient of the service. So the place of supply will be the foreign country, and therefore it will be treated as export. But please hold on. The reverse will be applicable in case an Indian vessel owner, it goes outside India and gets maintenance services done. The place of supply becomes in India, and that vessel owner will be liable to pay GST on reverse charge basis, right? So it will have a dual impact, right? Friends, in the steel industry, what we have seen, this 13(3)(a) has created a problem, right? Many a times what happens in the steel industries, the dies, they are created by the steel suppliers in India, and the services that would be liable to GST in case of jigs as per 13(3)(a), right? Because place of supply is performance based. So you have to be very careful of this 13(3), where you are charging for some performance based services to a foreign supplier, the foreign recipient. The customer is paying you in foreign exchange, but if it is a performance based service which you are doing in India, that would be liable to GST at the applicable rate, right? So this 13(3) and 13(8) of the IGST Act, these are very important to be seen when you are rendering the service even to a foreign supplier. Just because he is foreign customer, just because the foreign customer is paying you in foreign exchange, please do not treat it as a export of service. You have to go to the place of supply rules. Well, recently you have seen that the Supreme Court has lashed out at the CBDT as to how their date extensions can be in conflict with the Supreme Court's extension by its suo motu order dated 15th of April, right? The Supreme Court has extended all limitations for all the activities till 30th of June, you would be knowing. Many field formations, including we recently had one in Telangana, the field formations are taking the stand that you see, we will follow the CBIC's date extension. We will not follow the Supreme Court suo motu order. We had a case in case of GST refund. Now these have been extended by this 24/2021 to 29th of June in consonance with the Apex Court's order. So from 23rd of March, from the first suo motu order of the Apex Court till now, even in case you are facing a time barring issue, please, you can take the shelter under the Supreme Court's suo motu order, which is the law as per Article 142 of the Constitution of India, right? So this is very, very important for all the time barring cases during this COVID pandemic period from 23rd of March 2020. Various relaxations are there for filing the GSTR 3B and 4, etc. With so you have to pay some less amount of interest or penalty. We will share this PPT. You can go through at your own pace. Also on Will GST, our analysis is there table wise. One important change is that for the month of May, when you are filing the 3B, you need not consider 36(4). You can file it and take the credit as per your purchase register when you are filing the 3B for June. Then consolidated 36(4) you can see for the month of April, May and June, right? Various other relaxations are there, and you can file your returns with an OTP. Today the GST Council is meeting, as you would be knowing. Very soon we would see some relaxations on these COVID related items. So I'm not going much into this. On again for irrigation sector, it is clarified now on irrigation, the nozzle, laterals and parts of sprinklers or dip irrigation system. Even the lower rate of GST will be applicable. It was held by this circular 81 that the lower rate of GST will not be applicable on the parts of the dip irrigation system. Now it is clarified, it will be clarified going forward that by the clarification, I think this circular 81 would be amended that on the nozzles, laterals and the parts of the system also the lower rate of GST would be applicable. Well, mill owners, they were facing a big issue. There are a lot of search and seizures across the country, on especially in West Bengal, on the mill owners which were supplying the crushed wheat for public distribution system. That has been clarified that it will be taxed either at exempt rate of GST or at 5% rate, right? This is a specific industry issue. A big relaxation has been provided. We have been dealing with so many cases from 2nd of December 2020 where massive searches have been conducted across the country on these mill owners, especially in West Bengal. Now by this circular which would be issued going forward, I think at least some relaxation would be there, right? Now you see GSTR 2 and 3 have never seen light of the day, and still GSTR 2 and 3 are mentioned in the rules and the act itself. So all of this would be amended, and GSTR 1, it would be replaced by GSTR 1 and 3B, which is now a settled mechanism of GST returns, right? Friends, a very, very beautiful case. In case of race clubs, we have handled this in certain parts of the country, and now this Bangalore, Karnataka High Court has vindicated our stand in the case of Bangalore Turf Club. It is a very, very beautiful case, and you can understand how this GST law is being twisted, I would say, right? So it is not only goods and services law, it is becoming a goods, services and actionable claims law, right? So whenever there is a confusion that okay, this receipt is not goods or services, there is an artificial provision by which the receipt is made into an actionable claim. I will tell you the details of this case which we have handled, and you would understand how the lawmakers are twisting and how one should guard oneself. See, the purpose behind this, the history is that pre-GST on these race clubs, on the betting in the race clubs, the luxury tax was applicable on the entire betting value. Come GST, the GST was applicable only on the commission received by the race clubs. What happens? Say 3 punters go into a race club, they contribute 1 lakh each. So the race club as a totalizer, it collects these 3 lakh rupees charges 15% commission, that is say 45,000 rupees, puts back 2,55,000 on in the totalizer, and whichever horse wins the race, the respective punter, he gets the amount, right, of the bet. He has betted on 1 lakh and he gets 2,55,000, right? 45 plus GST, right? So 2,55,000 minus GST, so 45,000. The race club, what it does, it deducts 45,000 its commission plus 18% GST. Say the amount of GST is rupees 8,000. So it deducts 45,000 plus 8, 53. It puts back 257 in the totalizer. Now, from January 2018, the Ministry of Finance issued a notification, and before that a circular, and it said, gentlemen, this entire 3 lakh received by the race club for the bets, that would be treated as an actionable claim, which is considered to be goods, and on the entire 3 lakh the GST would be applicable. So artificially the entire amount was treated as goods, and you know, for actionable claims, all actionable claims as per Schedule 3, other than lottery, betting and gambling, only these three are taxable. All actionable claim other than lottery, betting and gambling would be outside the purview of GST. So they brought out a rule 31A valuing services of race course. Mind that, right? Please, over here, Schedule 3 allows only lottery, betting and gambling related actionable claim to be taxed under GST. Here, Rule 31A, in addition to lottery, betting and gambling, it brings out a new class, race clubs, and artificially it values the services portion as the entire 100% of the bet value. This was struck down by the Karnataka High Court. This artificial valuation under Rule 31A was struck down as ultra vires Schedule 3 of the CGST Act, right? What happens in the court, in the apex court, that is to be seen. In the meantime, a group of ministers have been formed by the GST Council who would give their view on this taxation in case of race clubs and casinos, etc. So this is a good time for the race clubs. Generally, the GST Council does not, listen to this sin products or services, so to say. But now this group of ministers have been formed, and you have the strength of this Karnataka High Court ruling. You can represent to the CBIC and the GST Council. Law Fitment Committee will also give its opinion, so must go to the Law Fitment Committee and represent. Friends, also please note that many a times, many of the companies, and I would dare say many of the consultants, are also taking a view that whatever comes in the credit of your profit and loss account is taxable in one way or the other, right? In one such case, what happened, now the instant taxpayer, it issued motorcycles to its employees or dealers, right? So say it issued a motorcycle to its employees for the purpose of delivery of goods, etc. The instant taxpayer, it paid for the motorcycles and did not recognize those motorcycles in its balance sheet. It just paid, say, 1 lakh rupees for the motorcycle. The motorcycle remained with the employee, but if the employee left the organization, the right of sale of that motorcycle and the consideration received from that sale, that right remained with the taxpayer. So now what happened? The motorcycle was sold after this employee left, and the consideration for sale of motorcycle that was recognized in the profit and loss account. Friends, please note, this is an actionable claim other than betting, gambling, and lottery, not liable to GST, right? So very, very important. This actionable claim, you must realize whatever comes in the credit of your profit and loss account, whenever you have this kind of a receipt, you must always weigh against actionable claim. That is, if you have any right to receive any money, you receive that money, right? You have to see, just don't tax it, right? While you should not pay less tax, you should not pay more tax also. So this kind of receipts, in case when you are foregoing your rights, this would take the form of an actionable claim and would not be taxed other than if it is for lottery, betting, and gambling, right? So very, very beautiful judgment, and possibly it will set to rest a lot of things. Again, but the Karnataka High Court, again in the right judgment in case of Aryan Trade Links versus Union of India, it has held that a credit cannot be blocked. You see, after this rule 86A, arbitrary blockages are being seen to the GST input tax credit. Many a times the taxpayers do not even know. Well, one fine morning you go out and go to the portal and see your credit has been blocked. First of all, friends, you must protest the blockages of such credit arbitrarily, right? Rule 86A can only be invoked where there is a reason to believe that there is some fraud which is happening. It cannot take the form of a simple scrutiny notice under 61. So the department has to go step by step. It has to use section 61 notice by ASMT 10 for inquiring on excess utilization of ITC. Then only it can go to blockage, right? And even if it goes for blockage, then it cannot block your credit for more than 1 year. Similarly, friends, in a similar case which we have very successfully filed with the High Court is the risky exporters. The blockage of GST refunds for these risky exporters. Now, what has happened in one of the cases of one of the taxpayers, the department has blocked the credit due to this risky exposure, blocked the GST refund, tagging it that taxpayer as a risky exporter. Great. So we have gone to the commissionerate and we have got the file cleared from the local commissionerate. It went to DGARM and DGARM started a second level of checking of ITC for L2 suppliers, right? That is your supplier. We protested against this and we filed a rate in the High Court, and after filing the rate, we see within 15 days the risky exporters tag got untagged, right? So many letters to DGARM and local commissioner did not pay it, but filing the rate itself, the authorities knew they had no case for their for checking this L2 suppliers, and the hearing has not even happened, and that case is now settled, right? So these blockages of credit and tagging as risky exporters for months and months together, friends, writ petition, it seems, is the only way out, right? And more often than not, if yours is a genuine case, you would get the relief in this. Well, some other good judgments in case of Waybills, right, is this Satyam Shivam Papers Product Private Limited by the Telangana High Court. Similar judgments have been held in the case of Gopi Krishna Infrastructure, in case of Ramcharitra Ram Harihar Prasad by the Patna High Court. Gopi Krishna Infrastructure is Tripura High Court, where the waybill was, the vehicle was detained and it was found the waybill had already expired. The courts have ruled that just because a vehicle was detained and the waybill was found to be expired, that cannot be a case to levy 200% penalty alleging evasion of tax, right? Evasion of tax has to be proved by the department. Just because a waybill has expired in transit, that cannot be a case for levying 200% tax. We have again litigated this matter in various forums, and it is expected that relief would be appropriate relief would be granted. Well, this case Satyam Shivam, Gopi Krishna Infrastructure, Ramcharitra Ram Harihar Prasad, all by various high courts. These can be taken shelter under when you go for the appeals in these kind of cases. Transitional credit. Well, we have deliberated over and over again on transitional credit. Tran 1 form not filed, Tran 2 form could not be filed, etc., etc. Right? In the last month, in the month of April, in the case of Agman services, the Apex Court has also ruled that this transitional form not filed cannot deny a substantive claim of transitional credit. Same has been held by the Honorable Delhi High Court in a batch of petitions. It bifurcated the petitions, all transitional credit petitions, into three parts. One part was those petitions where the Tran 1 form was filed, it could not be revised. Second, Tran 1 form was filed, could not be filed, but the taxpayer had some screenshot. Third, Tran 1 form could not be filed and the taxpayer did not even have screenshots. Right? In all the cases, in all these batches of writ petition, Delhi High Court has ruled that the transitional credit is a property of the taxpayer under Article 300 capital A of the Constitution of India, and TRAN credit should be allowed in all the cases, right? So this Super India Paper Products case by the Delhi High Court and the Agman Services decision by the Supreme Court can be cited and taken shelter under all the transitional matters. That is our legal submission. Few important issues in customs. First is the Steel Authority of India Limited case, right? See what happens under Rule 91E of the determination of valuation rules under customs. In case of turnkey imports, even the services portion, that is the designing, the drawing, technical documentation, valuation, that is included in the value of the imports. But in many of the cases, it is seen that when the imports of products is also done, artificially this 91E is invoked, and the value of the design, drawings, technical documents, which is not related to the imports, that is also artificially bundled in the turnkey import value, and a higher rate of higher valuation is done for the imports. In the instant matter, the Apex Court has ruled that this artificial valuation under 91E is not acceptable, and 91E can only be input where there is a link between the design, drawing, technical documents and the turnkey imports. Similarly, in a beautiful judgment, again, you all know that the Statue of Unity, right? This Statue of Unity, the parts of the Statue of Unity was imported. The department, customs department held that these parts are wielding material and they charged a higher rate, and so it was quashed by the Gujarat High Court in similar matter. Well, last week, in fact, this week only, we had various online hearings in customs matters, and by this guideline which is there for online hearings, now customs matters, central excise matters, service tax matters can also be heard by the virtual hearing. There is a process which is defined. Most important is that you can make an additional submission within 3 days, right? And your most important, very, very important, your submissions, what you are making in a virtual hearing. Generally, what you do, you make the submissions in a hearing and it is just noted out in the note sheet that the hearing is done, and the or a learned advocate or the learned representative, we reiterated the things which are mentioned in the written submission. But here the note sheet would be forwarded to you, and within 3 days, if you do not agree with the note sheet, you can also uh, in writing, you can protest against that, and the correct note sheet as per your submissions would be forwarded to you. So this is very, very important. And the note sheet now that has to be correctly maintained. However, in this week at least, we had 2 hearings in customs matters. The virtual hearings have not happened. I think there would be some time which would be taken before these virtual hearings are streamlined. Friends, last topic which we would discuss is this product linked incentive scheme, right? We talk about so many incentive schemes by the state government, benefit of electricity duty, ESI benefit, provident fund benefit, but many a times we leave out the real incentive scheme. This production linked incentive scheme is one such scheme by the central government. Friends, 2 lakh crore approximately has been uh, sanctioned for this scheme over a period of 3 years, which is almost as good as the GDP of the country for 1 year, right? So the scheme is that for 10 sectors have been identified. The mobile sector, the electronics hardware sector has already availed the benefit of this scheme. Foxconn, which is a job worker for iPhone, Samsung, all of these have benefited from this scheme, because for electronics hardware, the scheme was applicable from 1st of April 2020. Now, this production linked incentive scheme is a scheme for incremental sales, right? So if, say for example, your company has a sale of 1,000 crores in financial year 2021, and there is a target investment. If your company does an investment of say 100 crores, which is the target investment, it can be 10 crores, it can be 100 crores, depending upon your segment and your product, will come to that. But if you are eligible for the scheme, if you produce the products in the scheme, then on your incremental sales over and above 2021 financial year sales, say last year you did 1,000 crore, this year you do 1,100 crores, on this 100 crores incremental sale, there is a incentive of 4 to 6%, right? So if say on an average there is a 5% incentive, so you get 5 crore rupees incentive on the incremental 100 crores if you invest as per this scheme, right, on plant and machinery. So what do you do? What is the procedure? You first apply for the scheme, right? And the application is online. First, you check the eligibility of the PLI scheme for your company and for your product. Then you accumulate the documents. Then you have to apply before the respective ministry. We'll tell you what are the ministries. Most important is you have to calculate the approx incentive, because this is a fund based incentive scheme. An approximate amount of fund will be allocated and your incentive will be subject to that allocation. So very, very important is the application and the sanction stage, because the fund will be allocated to you at this stage only. So you must have the proper representation before the ministry, so that the proper allocation is done to you. Continuously the ministry would monitor the scheme, so you must continuously get your scheme monitored, right? You must have a task force, because a lot of money is at stake. And for the incremental sale, the incentive which is applicable for the current year, it would be payable to you in the next year, right? You can have your operations across the country in any state. Generally, if you are a company, it is better no, to apply for this scheme as a corporate entity, right? existing or new manufacturer. It need not be, you may be an existing manufacturer also, as we have discussed. You need not have a new setup totally for availing the benefit in this scheme, right? 10 sectors have been identified for this production linked incentive scheme. The steel sector, where you have to liaise with the Ministry of the Steel. Telecom sector, textile sector. So Ministry of Textiles, you have to liaise with for getting the benefits of this scheme, for getting the application moved over there. And it is a time-based thing. So there are other sectors are food products, high efficiency solar PV modules. Solar sector, you know, it is the pet sector of the government of India. White goods, ACs, LEDs, advanced chemistry cell, electronic sector, but the time limit for application for electronic sectors has elapsed because already it was in vogue from 1st April, you know. Automobile sector, pharmaceutical drug sector. So these are the 10 sectors which are important and which are laid down for this scheme of under production linked incentive scheme. So if you are falling under any of these sectors, you must, first of all, you must start the process of seeing your eligibility on a yesterday basis. Once you see that you are eligible, then you must go for an application within 60 days, right? Generally, the application would be granted or it will be rejected. So in Delhi with the ministry, you have to continuous follow up and represent regarding the application. It is not that you have applied and you would go to sleep. So friends, this is it. I think over the last 1 month, these are the critical issues and developments. Another very important, since you are all practicing indirect taxes, we will not touch upon direct taxes, but two important amendments would happen from 1st July in direct taxes. First is, which will impact your invoicing, mind that. First is this 194Q. You see, now on your invoices, many of you are collecting TCS under 206C1H. That will be substituted. You do not need to collect TCS now. Your customers need to deduct TDS from 1st July 2021 under 194Q. So we will discuss it separately when we discuss direct taxes. But this is important. Again, if your customers have not filed the GST, the income tax returns in the last 2 years, they would be liable to double the rate of TDS. So when you are practicing indirect taxes, you know, customers are very, very important. So the intimations to the customers must start. So this 194Q and 206AB, this will be implemented from 1st July. This also you must have adequate trainings in this regard also, and you must implement this 194Q and 206AB also in this month itself. So this is it from my portion. Now we would see in the chat box, we would answer all the queries. Mr. Brajesh Agarwal, he says, could you please repeat rule 90? Okay, so Mr. Agarwal, rule 90 is, we will discuss on with an example. The time limit, the time which has elapsed from the date of issuance of deficiency memo to the date when you refile your fresh application, that will only be counted. In other words, the time from the date when you are applying for refund via RFD1 to the time which has elapsed when the officer issues a deficiency memo, that will not be counted when you are calculating the limitation period for the purpose of GST refund, right? So for example, you are applying on 25th of May, right? for GST refunds. The officer gives you a deficiency memo on 15th of June. So this time period between 25th of May, your application date, to the deficiency memo date, 15th of June, that will not be counted to calculate the time barring period for GST refunds, right? However, mind that from the day you get the deficiency memo to the date you make the fresh application, that will still be continued to be calculated for the purpose of time barring period for GST refunds, right? Mr. Abhishek says table 8A of GSTR 9 ITC as per 2A auto-populated as 0 for SEZ GSTINs. Does this mean ITC at all is to be levied by SEZ units or developers? Table 8D will be negative for such persons. Mr. Abhishek, what I understand, you're talking about input tax credit when you are supplying to SEZ wide a bill of entry, right? Our view is that it should also form a part of table 4B5, your all other ITC in 3B. Therefore, it should be reported in 6B. And as you rightly said, you will have a negative value in table 8D, which if you get a notice you have to contain. However, you see there is a clarification by the GST Council. I don't remember the date of the clarification, where it is also added that any SEZ related ITC that you can show under imports. So if you do that, then 8D will not be negative. But if you take the view that even this would be SEZ related ITC would be in 4B5 and 8D is negative, you may get a show cause in this respect, but you have to contain that and you have to give the requisite clarification in this. Mr. Bhavesh, he says the due date of 3B is 20th. The GST payment of 2 crores we paid. Just a moment. The due date of GSTR 3B is 20th. The GST payment of 2 crores we paid 1 crore on 30th. Another 1 crore paid on 10th of the next month and filed the 3B. From when interest will be charged? Whether interest will be levied on 1 crore for 10 days and another 1 crore for 20 days, or both interest will be charged on 20 days. Please give your insight based on provision of GST. Mr. Bhavesh, it is absolutely clear that in your case, interest will be applicable on 1 crore for 10 days and 1 crore for 20 days, right? Interest will not be applicable on 2 crores for 20 days, right? It is absolutely clear. There is no doubt about this. Okay, Mr. Jha says, please see my query in an answer tab, please advise. Mr. Ashok Jha, I'll just check if I don't have your query as of now, if you can type in the chat box. Mr. Brajesh, again, I think you have missed one point on Rule 90 when you have considered the overall 2 years limitation. In your example, if the last date is 30th May and have filed the RFD on 25th May, then you can have only 6 days. Extra time will be excluded from the time period. Yes, I have said that, Mr. Agarwal, that 6 days will only be your cushion period, right? So if you file from the date of your deficiency memo to the date of fresh application, if you have spent more than 6 days, then your application still is time barred. Next is, can you please comment on all e-generated invoice will be shown in one return? Is it mandatory invoices will be populated into GSTR1? Yes, if there is no technical glitch, all e-invoices would be auto-populated on GSTR1. Mr. Deepak says accumulated education cess and Swachh Bharat cess availed during pre-GST period were reversed in 3B in August 17. We have applied for refund and it was rejected on time barred and not eligible. Kindly suggest if there is ground for refund of cess and any case laws which you may suggest to strengthen your application. Yes, there is a recent judgment by one of the high courts, right? Offline, I can tell you the judgment also, where the credit of this Swachh Bharat and education cess has been allowed and has been considered as erst, not non-erst in the current law. So you can take the benefit of that high court judgment. I can share you that judgment offhand. I cannot remember that exact the citation. Okay. Next is Mr. Basu filed GSTR 1 nil for consecutive 3 quarters. Is a liable to cancel GST registration? Mr. Basu, I cannot get your question. If you can please correctly put in your question. Mr. Rahul Patel, it says, sir, in our case, number of export invoices are large in number. It is Herculean job to update e-invoice wise shipping bill details. Therefore, can we upload fresh export details along with shipping details at column 6A of GSTR1? Well, that would again be a violation of 34.1, Mr. Rahul. Rule 34.1 read with 12.1 and 31 of the GST Act. So our suggestion is to upload credit notes and debit notes instant, right, as we have deliberated. Ms. Priya Jha, she says, can you please share your views on the due date for GSTR 1 for June 2021 and onwards referring notification 83. For June 2021, I don't think GSTR 1 has been extended. For May, the last date is 26th of June. Mr. Sriram N, he says, sir, in the above query of Mr. Bhave's interest will be applicable till the amount is set off from the cash ledger. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Sriram, yes, in Mr. Bhavesh's example, now, if the 3B, now again, this is a contentious issue, right? The department may always contend that yes, you have paid the amount of 1 crore in your cash ledger and that is not knocked off. But there are various decisions whereby we have argued successfully that even if you pay in your cash ledger, that would amount to payment of tax. And just because you have not set it off against 3B, that would not tantamount to an excess of interest. So, of course, department can contend this, but in our concerted view, if you go on and litigate this matter, you would get relief under this because tax has actually been paid. Because also there is a technical constraint. The 3B does not get filed until and unless you pay your full tax. So there is no option to pay the partial tax. And the very moment you have paid your partial tax, even though in the electronic cash ledger, you must get relief from at least the interest portion. That is our view in this matter. Okay, Mr. Basu says dealers submitted GSTR 1 nil for 3 consecutive quarters is a valid case for cancellation of GST registration. Yeah, yes, Mr. Basu, it is a valid case if you do not file your GSTR 1 and 3B consistently for more than 2 quarters. The GST registration is liable to be cancelled, but before cancellation, there would be an opportunity given to you for hearing. And if you file it, then your cancellation would be revoked. There is a fresh circular for revocation, and the time limit for revocation has been extended from 1 month to 3 months. So you can take the benefit of that. But 1 and 3B, if you file, if you do not file for 2 quarters or 2 tax period, you're liable, your GSTR1, your GST registration is liable to be cancelled. That is the law. Okay, Mr. Ashok Jha, the SSC is supplying and erecting substations. Does he have to charge GST in works contract and charge GST at 18%? Or he has the option to consider supply part separately and charge 5% and charge erection and foundation separately? Please advise if we can go with second option. Just to clarify, he is purchasing all the parts from the market and is not manufacturer of the substation. Very good question, Mr. Jha. Now we have dealt with it across the country in case of solar modules, for which an exception has been made by notification dated 1st of January 2018 by the council. Sorry, 1st of January 2019. Now it is an issue with all EPC contracts, right? You purchase certain material from the market, utilize it for the purpose of your EPC contract. You have to see what is the principal element in the supply. In our case, in solar modules, you see what happens is that the value of the solar module is at least 60%. The value of the other accessories is around 50%. So if it is a 1 crore contract, 75%, in fact 90%, I would say, is the value is of the goods, and the solar modules and the accessories only 10 to 15% is the value of the civil work. In that case, it was held across the country by all the appellate authority, the advanced ruling authorities, that it will be considered at 18% under works contract. Our view is very clear that it should be taxed as the principal element, number one. In case of solar modules, a separate valuation mechanism has been ruled. But if in your case, you can separately bifurcate and your contract also says that this is the value of the goods and this is the value of the services, you must charge, you can charge, I would say, on the material part the respective rate and on the services part the 18% rate. It is not within the purview of the department to artificially bundle it as work contract service and charge a 18% rate. On the other hand, another alternate argument I am giving you is under section 2119. Works contract is only for immovable property. So you have to see what is the property which is coming out of the works contract. If it is a movable property, then the whole case is disclosed. But even if it is a works contract, even if it is an immovable property, then if you can bifurcate the material value and the service value, please go ahead and charge the respective rates. Mr. Bhutra, he says, can we have a copy of the PPT? Of course, Mr. Bhutra, you can have, we'll send it across to all the participants. Mr. Basu, we are manufacturing, he says, fuel dispensing pump, we can avail product link incentive scheme. Mr. Basu, no, for fuel dispensing pumps, this scheme is not applicable. Ms. Jha, she says, we have unutilized ITC lying in credit ledger. This balance are lying from 2 years plus, and also, well, this is incomplete. Your question is incomplete, Ms. Jha. Mr. Mandal, he says, is there any relaxation on principal amount of GST during COVID for MSMEs? So there are various relaxations, but there is a relaxation for interest for 15 days. But principal amount of GST, how can there be a relaxation? If you have charged GST, you have paid. You would require to pay. 15 days of relaxation is what the government is giving you. So friends, with this we come to the end of this session and our second colloquium. We'll see you next month again. and with all the new developments, and the PPT will be sent to you. In case you have any further queries, our email ID is at info@taxconnect.co.in. You can always send a mail to us, or we'll be available to answer you. We would be happy to answer any of your queries relating to practical issues in operations. Thank you very much. Thank you for your session. Thank you for your participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable deliberation, and thank you everyone for joining. We will be conducting this kind of webinar every month. We hope that you all will join and make our session successful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.